panelists already on ground. So welcome, Mr. Tadi Sampson, is the CEO, co-founder of Quizak. Thank you so much for joining us. Miss Odunwayo Aliu, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Awesome, awesome. It's so good to see you. It's so good to see you. Amazing stuff. Miss Chidima Moses. Good to see you. Good to see you. Okay. Is Mr. Oliemi Imole already around you? Okay. It doesn't seem so. Okay. So what we're just going to do is we're just going to dive into this. Thank you everybody for joining this particular panel, and I believe so strongly that our panelists are prepared to share amazing insights with us going forward. So without taking too much of our time, I would like to direct the first question to Ms. Chidima Moses. Your work with Key Academy, right, is about reimagining the education and learning space. Can you tell us about the ideal learning space? What does the ideal learning space look like?
Such an opportunity. Okay, session already dually and a learning education. So because a face that has had least throughout the last. So what in the academy where I am currently, I would say that first of all, a learning space should be an enabling environment for every child. So before I go on, it says that breakout rooms will close in 49 seconds. Can I?
Oh,
I mean,
no, that should not be happening. That should not be happening. So I'm wondering why that is happening.
I've seen it as well.
What?
I can see the same here.
Yeah, I also saw it. Mr. Ladipo, is there something we can do about that? Hello? Hello? Mr. Ladipo, is there something we can do about that?
We are looking into it, sir.
Okay, thank you, please. Okay, thank you.
I see that some people are saying you can't find an icon to join the breakout session. Okay, we have a
okay.
Sorry, please, if you're not on the panel, could you please turn off your video, please? If you're not on the panel, the panelist lineup, you could turn off your video, please. Thank you. All right, great. Okay, so I guess that was a little glitch, and we're glad that we've been able to rectify that. So I'll go back to the question I asked earlier from you, Ms. Chidima Moses. Could you describe what the ideal learning space looks like? Oh, wow. Okay, okay, I'm not sure she can hear me. All right, could Miss Odunwayo Aliu, could you just, take on that question? Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so I would say that an ideal learning space should be, in terms of, I'll answer this in terms of culture and attitude that should be in a space, and in terms of the physical structure. So an ideal learning space would be a space where there's a culture of openness, there's a culture built on trust and mutual respect, a space where children are allowed to be children, a space where children are active participants in the learning process. You know, they're not just taking information, they are actively participating in the learning process. And in terms of physical structure, I would say it should be designed in such a way that there's a lot of flexibility allowed. It's a space where collaborative kind of work and projects can be done.
Awesome, awesome. All right, so I'll just want you to follow up on that question I just asked you. You are the lead of an amazing project called Bramble, Bramble Network, and Bramble has a learning space, right? So can you let us know how you have brought this ideal, like you just talked about? Can you let us know how you brought this ideal into expression with Bramble Learning Space?
You loved it. I'm looking forward to the alternate ways as well that people learn from. Thank you so much. The edition change is coming.
Hello?
Change is coming.
Yes.
We're gonna.
Hello, please. Could we mute all other microphones that are? If you're not a panelist, could you mute your microphones, please? Thank you. Could you mute your microphones if you're not a panelist? Thank you. All right. So yeah, Ms. Aliu, could you go ahead and just share with us? Thank you.
Okay, so I will measure two things that we've been able to do in Bramble. Two things that I think are quite important. The first is in terms of the kind of dynamics, the kind of relationship dynamics that happen between a teacher and a student. So, what is obtainable in our traditional mainstream schools is that, a teacher is seen as the master in the classroom. They are, giving out instruction, telling students what to do and when to do it. And students are just meant to comply. In Bramble, the way we have reimagined that is that our teachers are called catalysts.
Okay.
And this is not just in the fancy changing of name, it is about changing the role. So our teachers act, our catalysts, they act as support, as a guide to the learners. The learners are allowed to make active decisions. They can question, they can make their doubts known, they can ask questions, they can participate, they can choose. There's a power of choice that has been given to the children. They are able to choose what they want to learn and how they want to learn it. They are able to choose how they want to be assessed. So that's one. And the second one will be in terms of, I'll say, grading and standardized testing. Okay. So, there's an unhealthy and obsessive, attention that we give to, ranking students and, grading them. In Bramble, what we have in the mainstream, the way it is that we give so much effort and attention to that, to comparing students with students and all of those things. And in Bramble, how we have reimagined that is that, to say it plainly, we don't write examinations, at the end of term and sessions. And, instead of writing, because we don't write examination, because we believe examination is not the best way of testing what a student is learning, how much they have been able to learn. So instead of that, we do what we call project-based learning. So children, they do projects to show what they have learned. If you say you have learned for 2 sentences, how does it apply in real life? Can you do something? We also do peer review. Those are some of the ways we have
amazing. Thank you so much. I just got to know that Miss Chidima Moses is back. I'll be back to you. Thank you so much, Odwayo, for sharing that with us. I'm quickly going to move to Mr. Thaddeus Samson. In recent times, we've gotten to know that the attention span of students are maybe tanking or something like that. Maybe because there's a proliferation of access to the internet and all of that. So rather than seeing that as a disadvantage, game theory has been brought into into education in recent times to amp motivation among students. Can you share with us how Quizark has been able to adapt the game theory for education, as it were, and what are the outcomes you have experienced so far? And how can parents or educators adopt the game theory?
Thank you so much, Mr. Dari. So glad to be here today. So I'll talk a bit about the history of gamification itself and the belief and the belief people had about gamification, if it's right or if it's not. So basically, the idea of gamification is as far back as around 2002, and it was coined by a British consultant that was called Nick Perry. And by then, the idea of gamification was used in describing the use of game elements to be able to make user interface very, very fun and interactive to use. And then fast forwarded to 2010, it becomes the mainstream, and it becomes one of the most trended words in Google
Wow.
Trends. And then a lot of people started, embracing it, developing solutions to really promote learning around gamification, and people started giving a lot of definition for it. But in my own point of view, which the definition I think is very correct for gamification, was defined by Gardner, and they say that gamification is the use of game techniques, game mechanisms, and game theory to be able to promote, motivate students to achieve their goal. So there are a lot of moving parts in that definition, which are game mechanisms, goals and motivation. But the part I'm going to be really discussing on is motivation. So, and that's where people are really getting the idea of gamification very wrongly. So people think before you create anything around gamification, you have to design a game mechanism that has to do with people raising a car, we're playing against myself and it's a Candy Crush. No, that's a wrong definition of gamification. So the main difference that differentiates the idea of gamification to the non-game theory comes in the aspect of what both of them represent. So I'm going to give a slight definition to this. So in terms of game theory tries to engage their audience from the transactional level in order to be able to entertain them at the end of the day. But when it comes to gamification engages its audience from the emotional level in order to motivate them. So that's the difference. So say, for example, with Quizark, what we are doing at Quizark is that we are able to break every subject that exists in every class to a form of like an element that students can interact with, and we've been able to embrace the concept of points, badges, tournaments, and the likes into this platform. And we want to motivate all students to really find fun while they are learning on Quizark. And the way we are doing that is we're creating different challenges. Those challenges, when you want to learn on, say, physics, for example, automatically some challenges are going to be created for you based on the goal you want to reach in physics. And for these challenges, they are going to be mission. So what motivates you is that you want to really hit these challenges by finalizing your mission, by completing your mission. And as you meet this mission, you're going to get your score, or you see yourself ranking on the leaderboard, and this motivates you so well. And that's the basic idea. And to put it in another perspective, if you look at, for example, now I used to say this a lot when I explain gamification to people. prepaid meter is becoming a thing in our country currently. And one of the problem that we'll start seeing is ability for us to manage voltage we use. And one of those best way we can really achieve that is through gamification. How would that work? By if myself and you were neighbors, and there could be a gamification platform that would show me how much you are utilizing your voltage in your home. You're spending about 20 watts, maybe 20 units in a week, and they show it to me and I'm spending up to 100. That's the concept of social norm. I'm saying that I'm falling outside of the social norm. That's the idea of gamification. It involves nothing like using games to play or something. So that's
okay.
And
thank you so much for that. Yeah, thank you so much for that. You've been able to explain that game theory deals more with the transactional aspect, while gamification deals more with the emotional aspect. Thank you so much for that. Amazing, amazing. So I have my core moderator, Oluwatosi, on this call as well. After my question directed to Ms. Chidima Moses, she will come up to ask a number of questions as well. So Ms. Chidima Moses, I was asking earlier about what the ideal learning space, right? What the ideal learning space look like. But let me quickly, let me adapt that question a bit, right? So, for instance, right, I have 2 children, and I want to transform my home to an ideal learning space. How am I going to be able to do that, right? Yeah, considering what you do with Key Academy, yeah.
Okay, so given what we do with Key Academy, the first thing you want to create around your home is an enabling environment. And ordinarily that should make sense, but what you're trying to focus on are resources around your learning space or in your home that the children can easily play with. So, and there's some things to keep in mind. So there are open-ended materials that you can use, and there are closed-ended materials that you can use. Open-ended means that the children can use these materials, learn for themselves, and have different learnings at every time that they use these resources. Closed-ended means that if I use this, it only has one purpose. So for instance, a toy phone. Once I pick up a toy phone, I can only do one thing with it. I can only make a call, a pretend call. But whereas if I pick some materials, maybe materials that I can put together, learning blocks, today I can make a car, tomorrow I can make a house. So these are open-ended resources. Another thing is that you want resources to be within reach. So in a school setting, I've seen some schools that have resources in their learning space and then they keep it somewhere high because they don't want the children to reach it and then make a mess of the place. That's unrealistic, to be fair. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Why do you have it there? If you want to have it in your house or even in a school, it has to be within reach. So the least you can do as a parent, because I can understand, quite frankly, that it could be frustrating to have that resource in your home and then the children mess it up sometimes. The least you could do is make sure that the learning space is, you have, okay, for instance, the flooring could be wooden, could be carpet, it could be not carpet, it could be carpet, it could be anything that wouldn't require you to do so much work to clean up when you're done, because definitely mess should be encouraged. I know we are afraid of children making any kind of mess, but we can't run away from it. It's one of the things, it's one of the ways that the children can learn. Another thing is an open learning space, a big surface area where they can work on. So you don't want too much resources, you don't want too much toys in the way, you don't want lots and lots of tables and chairs. And this, I don't know if it's an African thing, but we could have like chairs, colored chairs. You want it to be really colorful. I don't think it works that way. I really don't think so. So you want to have enough space where the children can work. I mean, they need to be able to move one thing from here to here without, bumping their leg on something or falling over something. And one thing I know that keeps children reassured of their work and how they're doing, how important their work is having a display board. So a display board encourages the child to do more. A display board is where they keep their work. They keep maybe pictures, drawings, anything. They keep these things on that display board that always remind them of how great they are or how wonderful what they're doing is. And if you have that, you can always have conversations around them every day. So if I come into the place today, I might want to continue off what we did yesterday, or I might just want to do something new. But these are things that we at Key Academy keep as important stuff. So when you come into our spaces, all of what I've mentioned are what we have, full on. We have resources at the children's reach, we have a display board, we have an enabling environment, and we also encourage a space that looks like a workshop. So a place where everything can be done. I can hammer down nails, I can construct whatever, but usually depending on what you would want as a parent. So do you want your children to be science focused, arts focused? It could be that you won't want all of it. You might want to separate these areas and have different sections for these things. But generally, in summary, you want a space as an enabling environment for every child that walks in there. They shouldn't be bored. And that's it. Thank you.
All right, yeah, so Ms. Oluwatoyi will go ahead with our questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Chidima, for that insightful one. The next question is to Mr. Imole Oluyemi. You work with Pass NG, recorded more than 500,000 students helped since inception. How were you able to scale your product? What lessons do other EdTech product creators need to glean from what you have built, the impactful and profitable products that you have built? So we'd like to learn about what you do, sir.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you for this opportunity. First, I'd like to apologize that I came a bit late. I just got off work, sorry. So yes, yes, I was one of the founders of Pass.ng, and yes, currently I'm not doing like full time with the company anymore. But while we were building the company, one of the things that I could say that made it quite a success was mostly because we were able to leverage like the right kind of partnerships. But I would take us a step back. I'd say that one of the things that we also quickly realized while we were starting was that typically, I think maybe in Africa, and I think I'm saying this because I have so far sort of studied like the education landscape here in the UK. And then I found that there are some differences. For instance, for last year, there wasn't, and here's where I'm going, there was COVID, and I was made to understand that there wasn't really public exams last year. And then the kids still were graded somehow. And here is what I meant. In Nigeria, we mostly, or maybe in Africa generally, we mostly tie things to like a particular outcome, which is not necessarily a learning outcome. It's probably just something like an exam. So when students learn in quote, or they're being taught something, both the parents and the kids themselves are probably doing this learning to pass a particular exam. It has to always move towards a particular exam. And so if that is what is needed, then what can we do within maybe 3 months of like exam prep? What can we do to here's one thing that we found out also, that for someone who is writing SSC, for instance, the person is probably couldn't remember all of the things that they've learned from like year 1 to year 6, but they want to squeeze all of those, or maybe SS1 to 3, squeeze all of that into like 3 months of learning and then be ready for the exam. So what can we do to sort of optimize that learning in that short period of time, such that these kids are actually really, really ready for this exam, if that is the outcome? And then maybe we can even be lucky enough to squeeze in actual learning outcomes in that 3 months. But it's not totally realistic, to be honest. And so what we got good really at was to prepare students for these exams in that short time. And then of course that also meant that we had to leverage all of the partnerships that we could get. For instance, we were able to partner with like a telco in Nigeria, which sort of like helped us to reach as many students as possible. There's at least about 6-point-something million students writing exams year in, year out in Nigeria at the very least. And so that means a very big market and some incentive on the side of this partners as well. And so this was one of those things that really helped us. we got good at this thing. We made sure that for all of the prep exams that we are actually offering, we had like the best content for them. We had the depth of the content. We had like the deepest when it comes to, you know, those kind of exams in Nigeria. And so for me, I'd say those are things that actually really helped us. And then of course we were all very, very young, and we were just hungry to really make our mark, you know, on things, which really also, you know, went a long way. But we made a ton of mistakes along the way, which I'm not sure is part of like the context of this. But right now I'm sitting here in London and I'm thinking to myself that if I have the chance to do this over again, I probably have like a list of like, I don't know, 12, 13, 15 things that I would do totally differently. But yeah, so I'd say that. And then one thing that I will also say that was really, really key to, I don't know, the success that we had in like helping about 500,000 plus students was also the fact that we had some very good backers at first. 440NG, led by Chika and Wobi at the time, you know, saw this bunch of guys from Ogbomoso who just, you know, were just finishing school, straight out of school, and decided to, you know, back us, and the rest was history. And he was there all through. He's still there till now, even now that I've left Nigeria. Yeah. So all that actually really helped as well. So there's probably like specifics of this, but yeah, I'll leave that to after. So
okay. Thank you so much for that response. And you know, those 12 to 15 things, you know, that you said you've discovered, I think you should do a Medium post, right, about the 12 to 15 things, or maybe a YouTube video, right? Because I guess a lot of people will learn and then they don't have to reinvent the wheel, you know, that kind of thing. So thank you for helping us see that you have also been, you know, taking stock and doing an audit of, you know, your journey to have arrived at about 12 to 15 things. That has taken a lot of critical thinking. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So I'll just direct the next question to Ms. Chidima Moses. Right. So what new organizational roles, you know, structures and functions and relationships would we begin to see within the education and training system space, you know, if we're really going to, you know, build out a formidable alternative learning system, alternative education model system? So what are the things we'll be seeing? Like, you know, Ms. Odunayo mentioned that, Ms. Odunayo Aliu mentioned that they had to change the name teacher to catalyst. I mean, that's a fundamental change that would really make a whole lot of difference in how the educators carry out their duties, because the name could be limiting, the name teacher could be limiting, but by using the word catalyst, it has opened up an entirely new spectrum of responsibility and possibility. So I would like to know, what are your thoughts on the new kind of roles, functions, systems that would have to begin to deal with you know, building out this alternative education space?
Okay, thank you. So first of all, I love the name Catalyst. For we at Key Academy, we use co-learner, so we don't use teacher.
Amazing stuff.
What that literally means is that we are co-learning with the children. And quite frankly, we've seen that play out a number of times, and we tease ourselves sometimes that we should probably also pay school fees, you know, because we also learn so many things with the children. And I'm sure every educator can agree that their best learning periods have happened when they were with children. I don't know, that's the case for me. So given structures, roles, functions, I'd say the first thing is, in an alternative system, there should be no hierarchy. Quite frankly, I don't think the things that we've had growing up with the traditional system schools where we had headmistresses, headmasters, department leader, blah, 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 and all of those things in between, that has just formed this very long, long, unreachable and undesirable form of organizational structure, basically. I don't think that is something that will work with an alternative learning system. I mean, just given the name alone, alternative, you know that it has to be different. So no hierarchy, and it should just be flat structured. Now, I would suggest flat structured because it gives room for collaboration amongst these people who are supposed to facilitate learning with the children. So if the children are supposed to learn from the co-learners, or learn from the people that are around them, basically, then they should be able to come together. These co-learners or these educators in question should be able to come together and feed off each other's knowledge. But with hierarchy, that it doesn't give room for that, because you're basically saying, I can't reach the headmistress because I have to go through this person and go through this person. No. But in the case where everyone comes together to share ideas, to collaborate, to work together, they can call, I mean, if someone is doing something wrong, you can easily tell your neighbor or tell your partner, as opposed to where you are afraid that you have a head, you can't speak to your head about so and so thing. So flat structure, I would definitely say, please let that be. One thing we know as educators, and I mean, we've said it in different ways, but one thing I would say, and even my boss in question would say, is we are not gatekeepers of knowledge, neither are we a sage on the stage. We don't come giving directions to the children and saying this is how it should be done. No, we are all learning together. So everyone, I would suggest that everyone has responsibilities that they should pick up and keep to that responsibility and submit to one another. So you're sharing this thing with your team members, as opposed to submitting, or as opposed to giving these ideas or whatever you have to just one person, because one person can't even bear all of this alone. But as opposed to bearing the supposed burden together, it's easier to share and it's easier to manage. Relationships that should be built should be the type of relationship that supports open thinking and in an innovative environment. So they should be able to share ideas amongst themselves. They should be able to having that room alone, having that possibility alone would allow them to always look for innovative ways to work around lesson plans or work around curriculums, as opposed to having that hierarchy that I had already mentioned in the first place. Another thing is, last thing actually.
Okay,
is,
thank you.
Can I mention this last one? Just this last one. So the last one is when the co-learners or the educators in question should not be limited to just making assessments or just planning the curriculum. They should be given the role, or everyone should be given the role to make observations for every child, because that's the best approach to actually know if your child is learning or not learning. And that's it.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So we'll have to take it, very short, this time around. So I'm going to throw a question to Odunayo very quickly, and then I'll come to both Tade Samson and Imole Oduyemi at the same time, right? So Odun, can you let us know how we can ensure that alternative learning spaces are sustainable? Because the first thing is that it's out of the norm. So how do you get your space to be sustainable?
Okay, thank you. That's a very important question. So how to sustain, if you have already set up an alternative learning space, one of the major things that you have to do to ensure sustainability is to make sure that every stakeholder is involved in the learning process. So it's not like a regular school system where they all duty to run the spaces on the teachers or the school administrator. You have to ensure that the parents are involved, the children themselves, they see themselves as stakeholders. They know that this belongs to us. The community members have to see it as this belongs to us. So that's very, very, very key in ensuring that it's sustainable. You also have to make sure that you keep adapting because things keep changing. And you make sure that there's room for flexibility. You are flexible enough to see that this thing is not working and you quickly change it. This is not working and you change it. So those are the things I would say. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm sure that maybe down the line we might talk about the financial aspect of that if we still have the time. But I'll quickly, point my attention to both Mr. Tade Samson and Mr. Imole Oduyemi. If there is somebody on this panel right now that has a product, that is an EdTech product, can you give, one key insight in building EdTech products? Like in your years of working in this space, what are the most important things a person must know in, venturing into the EdTech space in Nigeria and in Africa? Yeah.
Tade, you go first.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks. Also, from my perspective and from the experience of Ghana since we started Quizark, First, not just for EdTech, for every industry, government policy is very key. So you have to ask yourself how susceptible is your startups against education policy. Are you building an alternative to existing curriculum, or are you complementing it? If you are building an alternative to the current curriculum, then you have to take policy very seriously. So sorry, both ways you have to take policy very seriously. But when you started building an alternative to current policy, then you have to dance by the tone of the government. So my second, that's a very important point, and it's not just applicable to just EdTech, but for everyone. And the second,
thank you very much. Yeah.
The second point I would like to just talk about is about your contents. So you have to ask yourself, who are you building for? Who are you targeting? For example, an EdTech platform aimed at corporate organization wouldn't present exactly the same content as those that are targeting K-12 students or early students. So that's very key. Your content matters a lot, and how you present your content as well matters. So for EdTech, there might be a lot, but I want Imole to talk more about that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Mr. Imole now.
Yes, so just like you said, paying attention to government policies and things, but I also had on top of that regulatory framework. For instance, education is not just anything, it's also quite regulated everywhere around the world. And so you want to ensure that you are taking that into consideration when you are building what you are building. For instance, for those of us we were building in the test prep space and getting access to like past question papers and things like that. You have to ensure that the appropriate bodies are being they gave you the right permissions to actually use all this content. And if that is not the case, if you want to go around it, you need to find a way to ensure that you don't go on and brush them, and cause some legal consequences. Also, you want to ensure that the technology that is backing your product is that which can be used by these people that you're actually building for. You want to understand your users very well, and so you want to ensure that you are building something that they can use. The kind of way you will build for kids in like 0 to like 5 years is different from the kind of way you will build for people who are within like the K-12 spectrum. So it's all different like things, and you have to ensure that all these things are being done. And then lastly, is your product a regional product or it's more like an international one? You want to define all these things from like beginning. For instance, Pass.ng was one of the big things that even though we made a name with it, we couldn't go international with that name. So we probably want to ensure that we expand beyond that. So these are things that there's a whole lot, but I will leave it here as well.
Thank you so much. All right, so Tony, please go ahead now.
Thank you so much, our dear panelists. We have learned a lot of things from you. It's amazing how people are doing stuff and you probably don't even hear about them because they're not making so much noise. But we thank God for this kind of platform where we get to learn, unlearn and relearn. Yeah, this question will be going to all of our panelists. When Mr. Oluyemi was speaking earlier, he said he leveraged a lot on partnerships. So we want to ask, and it goes to all of you, please, what areas are the most important for partnerships to scale alternative education and EdTech solutions? Like what aspects are, would lean more on partnerships, to see it come through. So I would like Ms. Chidima to start first, then, let's just take it one by one.
Hello. So there are two things actually for me on partnerships. I think, and this is one of the things that we have tried to advocate as educators or as people in education space. And one of it is having to collaborate with organizations. I think collaborating with organizations would help even the education system as a whole to thrive. So if we can partner with organizations, and this is not just reaching out to companies asking for maybe a few things that they have, this is actually reaching out to them and working with key people in these organizations. So you're working with masters. And this is one of the things that we have here, where we have certain subjects, certain areas of learning, and then we try to bring experts in that subject matter. So we could have a doctor come in, we could have just anyone willing to partner with us into our space because we are an alternative learning space as opposed to an EdTech solution. So EdTech, I'm sure they have what their solutions might be the ideal one, what it might look to them. But for us, as alternative learning space, what we think would be ideal, aside money, put money aside, getting these things from people. The most important thing for us is having to collaborate with organizations, having organizations to work with us so that the children not only just learn these things on paper, but see it in flesh. They can touch it, they can see it, they can work with a doctor, they can work with a sailor, they see what it really means to work with these people. So I think collaborations with organizations is the most important part of partnerships for us.
Thank you so much. Ms. Odunayo, can you take it up from there?
Okay. So to add to what Chidima said, collaboration, yes. And I would also tie it to what the previous question, it's that we need to, really pay attention to the majority of the children living in rural communities. Because, we're talking about EdTech and all of these things, knowing fully well that about 50% of all of these people still don't have access to internet connection and all of that. So in collaborating to, scale alternative learning models, we have to work with communities in this region. Don't let, when we are designing whatever solution we're designing, put equity in your mind, think about these people, make sure your solution is affordable, it's accessible to all of these children. And so in scaling alternative learning models too, we should work with local communities, grassroots communities, rural educators, and also governments, so that public schools too are not left out of this solution. We can package it in such a way that little chunks of these things that we're talking about can be implemented for the majority of our Nigerian children.
Thank you so much. Equity, very important. So Mr. Tade, can you please, let's hear from you.
Okay, thank you so much. So I have 2 points, but I'll just state one of them. So which is, I think government intervention, it's very key, an important partnership to scale alternative education. So government needs to recognize that there are alternative learning methods in the first place. So without that, it's very, very difficult for someone who is homeschooling a child, and the child, is about to go to college, and you're kind of asking yourself, okay, what requirement do I need to meet? Like Mr. Oluwole said, over there, I think it's better, but here in Nigeria, we're still far behind. So in countries like Nigeria and Africa in general, I think government needs to explicitly state the requirements that must be met. And without this, you don't want to see cases where your child is, after homeschooling, struggling for college or for university education simply because there is a means of education that are not recognized. So I think that's a way we need to really recognize, and we need to work on with the government. Yes.
Okay, government partnerships. Thank you so much. And Mr. Oluyemi, could you wrap this up for us?
Yes.
Please?
So everyone has really said very, very, very important points, and I would also like to point to, I think Miss Chidima, I think the very first speaker, she mentioned something around, we in the EdTech and then they in an alternative learning space. I feel that even the partnership that you talked about, we could actually start from there. There's probably some sort of partnership that the EdTechs and the alternative learning spaces could actually do. And here's my point. She mentioned that it would be nice that they bring sailors in and physical things that these kids could actually say, oh, here it is. I remember that things as small as cartoon probably made a difference in my life at the moment, because I was born in like one very rural area where most of the people I grew up with are still in that place. But because I just watch cartoons and I see what was just possible. So maybe even if EdTech could partner with alternative learning spaces, and people could even see these things, even if we cannot see them physically, maybe it can help expand the minds of these young ones and things like that. That's on one side. On the other side, I would support what Mr. Tade has just said as regards government partnership. One of the hardest things that one can do, especially in Nigeria at the moment, is to try to build anything, especially here in education. It's actually really hard. Either it is EdTech or it is an alternative learning space. It is really, really hard to build. And so, and if you don't have the right support, there's a huge possibility that you might cut corners. And with that, it means that we won't get the right outcome for all these kids. And we know that it's just going to be a vicious circle. And so, yeah, the right partnership from government, making sure that they're actually supporting, you know, this entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs who are looking to build it and make a difference. That would be amazing. So thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining this panel. We believe you've been helped and you've gotten so much from, you know, the amazing panelists that have shared with us. So we're about to move to the main event right now. And if you have questions still for any of our panelists, you can, you know, drop them, you know, on the main chat, or, you know, just reach out to them one way or the other, and, you know, get to know them. Also, if you feel you want to partner with them one way or the other, get to reach out to them. And I believe that, you know, we'll have amazing things that will begin to go on from here. Thank you so much, everybody. Yeah, you can leave now, as it were. Thank you. Bye.
Such an enlightening session for me.